Hey family, thanks for tuning in. I'm Ant, this is BT, and that's TJ. The purpose of our show is to give a black perspective towards controversial and uncomfortable subjects. Unapologetic is a safe space for us and our viewers to embrace those difficult conversations. For those who are wondering who TJ is, this is our subject matter expert for this episode, our first very guest. So we're honored to have him here. For those who are curious, he's actually an attorney with a criminal justice background. So thank you for being here, TJ. How you doing, man?
I'm good, man. Glad to be here. Appreciate you guys having me.
Most definitely. So today what we're going to be discussing is systemic racism. So before we get into any type of questions and dialogue, I do want to give a few facts that kind of tie into what we're going to be discussing. So on average, in general, Black Americans account for about 13% of the population in the country. With that being said, the percentage of people in prison or jail are 40%. So you can kind of make that comparison right there, do your own math, and think about the disparity in those numbers.
Yep.
With that being said, percent of people serving life or life without parole, that's 48% as far as the people that are Black. So, TJ, I want to kick it off with this question to you. From your perspective and your experience being in the court system, seeing different type of cases and scenarios, are there any laws or verdicts that you've seen that have routinely affected Black people disproportionately to other races?
I think, I haven't necessarily been an attorney that long, so I've been, attorney for a couple years now. I think one thing that I've definitely noticed is the effect of the cash bail system and the plea bargaining system on Black people in America. For example, I spent a semester in the public defender's office in St. Clair County, Illinois. Got a chance to work with a bunch of defendants that didn't have the means to hire an attorney, right? And so they're in the system. They've now been arrested for a crime, and some of these people may have certainly committed these crimes, right? A lot of them, honestly, may not have committed these crimes, right? But at the same time, they've been arrested for these crimes, and now, in order to get out of jail before their trial, to hire an attorney, to hire, the defense in order to prove their innocence, they don't have the means to do that. They don't have the means to post that bail, so they're stuck in jail, right? I think there's a statistic that I read that 7 out of 10 people in our U.S. jails are not yet convicted of the crime that they're being held for. So I think that speaks out substantially to the way that our system is working. It essentially makes it to, if you don't have the means, you don't have the funds, you're not going to get out of jail. You're going to be stuck in jail, and you're in turn going to have less of a chance to defend yourself when it comes down to it.
Yeah. So that essentially just falls back to the same theory that, like, a lot of the times Black citizens or Blacks from the urban areas, they are served the underhand a lot of the times when it comes to being dealt the same platform, right? I know, for instance, my specific self, I've had a couple of run-ins in situations where I've been in suburban areas and I've still couldn't get out of that time period, but there's other people that got out literally in the nick of time,
Exactly.
And so it's, like you said, it's alarming. You're especially closer to that to see it at a disproportionate rate.
Right.
So I hear you on
right.
that.
I think it also goes hand in hand with the plea bargain system, right? As far as people, it becomes a prettier thing to see a deal that's going to send you home, as opposed to, I'm going to stay in jail. I'm going to fight this case that I know for this crime that I know I didn't commit. Whereas instead, they take this deal, they may pay a minimal fine, but now it's a conviction on their record. But like we were talking about earlier, you have to go home and see, you have kids at home you have to fend for. You have a job that you can't lose. You have, you might be in school taking night classes, right, that you paid thousands of dollars for, that, these people are financially hurting. So there's obviously a reason that they're pleading guilty to a crime that they didn't commit. I don't think if you asked anyone, if you walked up to them on the street and say, would you plead guilty to a crime that you didn't commit, most people would say no. But if you put them in these people's shoes, disproportionately Black people, obviously in America, we are traditionally less well off than our white counterparts, right? So it's disproportionately affecting us in that way.
Right. No, I agree with you. And something that I've seen, obviously I'm not a lawyer and I don't have that background, but outside looking in, something that I've seen for people that I know personally, or just different things that I've read up on and experienced, is that Black people end up in those situations, to your point, and typically we don't have as much income as other races. Typically those people in those shoes are in a impoverished area and they're just trying to get by. Yeah. And to see them get held on bail that they obviously can afford, if you look at their tax income, or compared to someone who's not Black and maybe come from a wealthier, more affluent background, they typically have the means to just bail out in seconds, in minutes. Yeah. Whereas the Black person just has to your point, just ride it out because they don't have those means. Right. And I've always found that to be one of the biggest, I think, unfair practices in the law, is that everyone is held to this bail, but not everyone can afford this bail. Me personally, I feel like it should be dictated based off your income. It's not fair to expect a Black person that comes from, or even in general, but mainly it typically affects Black people, to expect them to be able to just bail out like other people when they typically come from impoverished neighborhoods, or just even if it's not impoverished, they don't have as much income.
Right. And I think part of what you're speaking to as well is that we have these high incarceration rates in these urban areas, right? So it leads to more families having broken homes. And a lot of the times it's tied to minor petty things that they just, like you said, they don't have the money or service to get out of a charge. Can be so easily beaten if you have even the lowest of a personal attorney, that you can get out of those, right? And I have family members as well that have been through stuff like that. But like you said, like single parent homes, what are they going to do if their kids, if they have to try to sit and wait out a week or so for their court service, to just, for the court trial date, just to even get out on a weed charge or something like that, so that definitely hits home for me.
Right. And that, I think, leads into the second point that I wanted to talk about is not necessarily a law it's a law that hasn't been passed yet. Is I personally think that weed needs to be federally legalized. Right. Any weed charges, possession charges should be expunged altogether. I think I was looking at statistics today. On average, a Black person in the United States is 3.64 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana possession than a white person. In every single state, Black people are more likely to be arrested for weed possession than a white person. In some states, up to 10 times more. In Illinois itself, 7.5 times more likely to be arrested for possession of weed if you're a Black person, not just a Black male. Which a lot of people will point to the statistics about Black males, right? Yep. This is just being a Black person in general. Yeah. 7.5 times more likely. Yet, statistics show that Black people and white people are using these drugs at the same rate.
Exactly.
Right? So
if not more, because they have more money and more access.
So how are we here, right? If weed is not legalized federally, then we're getting to a point in some of these states where these laws are disproportionately affecting Black people. I think we've probably all had somebody that we know or a member of our family that has gotten a weed charge, and we've seen how that has affected them. Yeah. And now we've seen how far people have come with weed, right? It's legal in Illinois, yet people are still in federal prison serving life terms for 3 strikes laws because over weed.
Mine we possess that. And one of the biggest things, in addition to that I've seen from my perspective, now it's lucrative. So now they've made it legal in certain realms, and now the same people that have been affected by Black people at a disproportionate rate as far as in a legal ramification, they don't make any type of profit off of that. Not only that, they don't have as many avenues to even attempt to open up their own cannabis shop, weed shop, etc. It's so many difficult loopholes and etc. And I still see that going on where they're quote unquote trying to make it easier, more fair for minorities to get some ownership in that, but it's not right now. And it's really sad because now there's a profit being made, and then these same people that have been negatively affected by it don't even have an opportunity to make a legitimate profit off of it.
Are being exploited.
Right. And if you think about it in the most lamest terms, right? Let's say McDonald's starts a restaurant chain, right? They want to go. Right. They have the contracts to build on property, all this stuff, right? And then you have a local food shop that all you have to have is the money, the money and the opportunity and somebody that will willing to sell you the space to go out and do that, right? Right. So on the same thing, you're turning weed into a big, large corporation, right? And you have these small, if you want to put it into realistic terms, these are small businesses. They're running their own business. People that are selling weed out of their homes, out of their trucks, cases like that, right? And especially now that they're being more strict on the laws to punish people, that have been selling
without a license.
Recreational weed without a license, right? And we're not talking about people that are peddling like pounds and stuff like that, because that's a different level of scope that we're talking about being judged. But you're punishing at the same rate these people that you're incarcerating over and over and over again. You're punishing them as if they're a small business trying to make for their own and make ends meet.
So it becomes you're allowing these large companies, these large businesses, might be national, even worldwide companies,
or even
probably run by largely white people, right? Yeah. To make millions and millions of dollars off of this product. They call it a product, right? Yeah. But when you're pulled over by the police, it's not called a product, right? It's called where's the cannabis? Where's the marijuana? Where's the
narcotics?
The whatever, I can't think of the term right now, but it just becomes
controlled substance.
Black people are being exploited. You're being pulled over. You're being arrested. You're being sent to jail for the same thing that white people are making millions of dollars off of. And at the same time, back to your point, is there was these specific avenues to be able to open your own dispensary in Illinois, right? There was specific laws that you had to follow. There was like a whole raffle as far as getting these locations, right? And black people were disproportionately did not get these locations in Illinois, specifically in Chicago, right? Yeah. So now you don't allow black people to own the legal recreational dispensaries, but at the same time,
and now the punishment is harsher for
you're punishing people for not having that. So it's like it's a lose-lose kind of situation.
Right. And you kind of touched on it as well, and I was going to ask you about this before we even started, but in your eyes, so that could be one step that is a positive way to amend or fix a broken system, right? That we think for the average black citizen, it's tailored against them, right? What are some significant steps or processes that you believe can propel us in that right direction to reform?
I think, I don't think there's a single answer. I think it's a very complex answer. I think I'm right now, I wouldn't say I'm the person to answer that fully, but I do have, obviously everybody has ideas of what they think would help. It starts, right? So I think, first of all, personally, I think people need to educate themselves on the important issues, right? You need to know what you're talking about first, right? I think a lot of people, they want to talk about policing nowadays, but they also don't understand that the first institutionalized police force was the slave patrol, right? So I think in order to understand policing today, you have to understand where policing started from. Yeah. I think that's a huge thing to even, if people are having conversations, there's no point in having conversations if they're unintelligent, uninformed conversations that aren't based in fact and in truth, right?
That's very true.
I think in leading to those conversations, I think it's going to lead you to vote for candidates who align with your interests, right? They support your views. Right. The key word being vote, right? I think a lot of people will diminish the impact of their vote, saying that their vote doesn't necessarily matter, right? Obviously, the big talking point is the presidential election right now. I think there are a lot more positions to be voted upon than the president. Definitely. I think it's even down to your local school board, your village trustees, your whoever, your superintendent of your school, right? Those are affecting your daily life, your kids' daily lives, and those are going to be what's affecting your daily life in general. Is the president necessarily? I wouldn't necessarily say that my life has changed overall based on who the president is, right? I think probably my life is more affected by the people who are voting as far as where are my taxes going, right? Who's paying the taxes, who's paying more, who's paying little. I think those are the decisions that affect me more on a daily basis. So I think, voting for your local candidates. I think define the stereotypes, support your black friends who own businesses, right? A lot of people say go out and do these things, but then at the same time they're not supporting those people who are opening these businesses, right? So I think don't diminish what other people are trying to do by saying, oh, it's not going to make that much of an impact. Right. I think you have to be open-minded. I think you have to accept, support no matter what it is. Honestly, even if you think it's a crappy idea, right? If it's your friend, it's a person of color, I think you should support that because it's it's only going to propel us forward as a
step in the right direction.
Right. So those are a few things I think you could do personally. As far as the criminal justice movement itself, criminal justice system, police training, I think as much money as you can put towards training without taking away from putting more money towards the community, education, things like STEM programs that they're now opening in the city. That are helping these kids actually have a fighting chance instead of telling them that they have a chance. Right, a high school in Chicago was not equal to a high school in the suburbs. No matter how much we want to say it was,
it's not.
It wasn't. Right, so more money towards things that are going to help make those things more equal, rather than putting more black people in jail.
Right.
I think is going to help.
Yeah, and that's something that I was going to briefly touch on. And I know it's a touchy subject for everybody to get into as well, but you mentioning spending police funding on things that can propel communities forward, right? Police and police forces are meant to serve and protect overall, right? And I know that the word defund the police is a huge hot topic right now. I think there's a big stigma on both sides of the spectrum that there's a misunderstanding from the company and the organization that originally came up with the idea of defunding the police. Now, in their defense, I think they used the wrong word, because really when you looked into the actual content of it and what their process plan was for defunding the police, it really is just a reallocation of some of their funds into other areas of the neighborhood or community that are not as prosperous, that all they need is just a start, a foot, some type of upper hand, right? So when you speak about defunding the police, I speak of it on behalf of change.org. So change.org is where I got most of my in-depth information, because they were the first that I saw to put out an actual collaborative plan with the community and with the police officers to reallocate the fund, not defund, reallocate. So a lot of these police forces in a lot of the larger corporate or larger suburban areas, and a lot of the larger cities, metropolitan areas as well, they're funded like multi-million, I'm talking like $10+ million contracts to public school systems to watch over and be security guards and crosswalk guards and sporting events and stuff like that. There's so many other resources or outlets that we could be using that money for and towards that would allow them to be able to give them their time back and be able to engage more in the community and get more involved, right? So you take some of the money from them, and that they're getting towards these multi-million-dollar military grade equipment that they don't really need, new cars every year. They're going to function like big functions and bashes and things of that nature that are spending multi-million-dollar funds on just those events alone. You put that into an after-school program for the kids. You put that into a community outreach program for kids that are having struggle or have at-home issues that they need to get away from. There are positive role models in these communities day by day that are looking for opportunities, and they're working in the best of their ability, but they're so underfunded that they can't really go to the gauntlet with it, right? And I think that needs to be the clarity, because I know there's a lot of people also that from necessarily the black community that jumped on board before they actually read into it, and they said defund the police, and that caused attention, that caused a rift, right? No one needs to defund the police. As much as we want to say, defund the police and shout it at the top of our lungs, the police force overall is here to serve threat, and we need them.
Yeah, we do.
And there's a lot of great policemen out there. We're not saying that, but from a structural point, a systematic point, they target and they harass and they go after.
The funds could be better used towards the community. I think the main word that I caught on that you used was community, right? I think community. It's not necessarily, they don't need to be used towards policing. I think it's, the police are for the community, right? They're for us, by us,
serve
to
and protect,
and serve,
exactly.
Right. That's what they're there for. So if we're doing things that are further separating the divide between the police and the community, right? They're further militarizing the
That's
police.
what I'm saying. Yeah.
Then we're becoming, it's us versus them, right? Then it becomes like they're patrolling, our military are patrolling the streets of Afghanistan, right? That our police are rolling around in black cars, right? If you look in other countries, the police cars are like bright yellow, they're white, they're like the sirens are even different. They're like they stand out. They're not like the military, right? Like they are here. It's a whole different vibe.
Yeah, go ahead. Oh, yeah. Just real quick. So I actually looked into it. The NYPD, their police funding from the taxes that they get from a corporate or from a collection standpoint, they actually have more money and funding available to them than Ukraine and Belgium's military put together. Not their police forces, their military. That is insane.
Wow.
That is insane. Wow. And especially given the fact that New York, it's one of the biggest, I think or maybe the second biggest, I don't know, geography's not my thing, but they're top 2 biggest cities in the U.S., right? But that's just that geographic area. That whole state of New York together is not the size of Ukraine and Belgium put together, right? So it's just like, what are we doing with these funds? So.
Yeah, I think another thing as far as solutions, we're talking about solutions, everyone can identify the problem. What's your possible solution? So a couple of things that I'm thinking of is you guys are talking about the police. And I think what you all are alluding to is some negative reinforcement as far as where they're located and the exposure that they have to the community.
Correct.
So with that being said, I think that there should be some prerequisites for when hiring a police officer as far as their background. Where are they from? Maybe you should enforce hiring more people from that community. People who live there. They're more familiar with it. They're more exposed to the people, and they can better speak to the people, and they won't be as surprised as someone that's not from that area and they see something that they're not accustomed to.
Correct.
So I think that's a huge thing. Hiring people from that area, and not only people from that area, have some prerequisites. A certain percentage be of that race, because people just naturally relate more, and it's not a racist thing. People naturally relate more with people that they look like. Right. That's just a simple fact. So I think it should be a few more prereqs as far as how you obtain that job, just to make it a more smoother transition and make sure that there's now positive reinforcements when it comes to that interaction with with law enforcement, because that's what it's about at the end of the day. And my second point, I kind of touched on this earlier, when it comes to people going to jail for whatever reason may be, even if they did it or did not do it, the bail, when they set bail, it's disproportionately it's negative impact on minorities because they typically make a less amount of money. So I do think that law should be amended and changed to some form of based off a percentage of your actual income. Because it's not fair to ask me if I make $20,000 a year to pay a $10,000 bill, and ask you the same thing, and you make $100,000 a year, for example. Right. I mean, who do you think is going to get out? You and not me. I'm going to be sitting there until it's my turn, which can be years, as we all know, as far as sitting and waiting that time. So I do think that should be changed as well, and make it based off what your income is, because it's not reasonable to expect everyone to be able to afford it, and hence the systemic racism.
I think you even go farther and totally abolish the cash bail system in general, right? In Washington D.C., they've done it. It's obviously it has lessened the burden on the system, right? Because now people are able to. It's lessened the burden on the jails. They saved some hundreds millions of dollars for the city, for the state, based off just eliminating this cash bail system, because you're overusing all your resources by holding all these people in your jail, and at the same time, it's disproportionately affecting Black people. It's at this point it's a thing. If you're poor, like we said earlier, if you're poor, you're stuck in jail with the least chance possible to now fight your case in the end of it, even if you're not guilty, right? You can't even go out and look for an attorney. You can't get on the internet and look for who's the best attorney to hire, right? Because you don't have the ability to get on your cell phone.
You can't afford TJ.
And who says if you even get out of jail, you can afford a cell phone, right? You might have to go to the courthouse and use their technology as it is. So it's I think the cash bail system could definitely go. I think it could have a lot of positive benefits that people wouldn't necessarily think of by eliminating that system.
Right. So and I know we can go on and on about all the different things that we could do, or programs or processes that could be changed to be better for our communities, and to give the level playing ground as well. So I advise people to take some time and take some deep thought themselves to try to take a look at that and see, try to further their thoughts to see what they can think of that can be changed to be the benefit, even if you're not from those communities. So I agree with you on that point. So just to wrap up, that was a great conversation. I appreciate my man TJ for coming out. Give a lot of deep insight to what we were trying to accomplish here by just elaborating on what we think our perspective of systemic racism is. So as always, small business of the month, Dolph Golf, my boy Vic. He's getting a lot of buzz. His fall collection is fire. Definitely about to cop one as soon as we get out of here tonight. Charity of the month, do not forget that Harper Kid Foundation. We actually will be dropping a recap video on Thursday of our time at her fundraiser that we had 3 weeks ago. I mean, I still talk about it. It was a great experience to be at. I know Ant says the same as well. So yeah, I just keep checking into them. They're always doing great things in the Chicago community. And keep an eye out for their link in the description so that you can go and donate at it.
All right, awesome. With that being said, we're going to transition to our challenge of the week. We always have something fresh, something new, try to do something different so you can go out there and be a part of the change instead of just complaining about what the problem is, because everyone can do that. So our challenge for this week is, if you know a minority that has dealt with the law in any shape, form, or fashion, ask them their perspective, what their experience was compared to someone that they may have encountered during that experience with law enforcement. And you may get a different example that you didn't hear today that can be more conducive to your learning, your experience with that person, or just overall general kind of what systemic racism is and how it affects certain minorities.
Or even eye-opener.
Yeah, exactly. But thank you all for tuning in. As always, we appreciate it. As a reminder, we'll be airing every Wednesday evening. Please like, comment, subscribe. We would love to hear your thoughts. Spread love is contagious. God bless.